from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez, America's favorite late-night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S, at Rich Valdez on all of the social media. Welcome to the Friday night edition of the program. We are live, we are national, and I'm happy to be here. It's truly a blessing to be with you. The phone number, if you want to join us, 833-482-5337, 833-4-Valdez, and Christianity is under attack yet again, this time in Katy, Texas. Now, last night, this occurred while I was on the air, and I didn't have all the facts yet, so I couldn't get to it. But one of our listeners in Houston had sent me a note regarding this, and I wanted to look into it, pull the audio elements and make sure we had everything we need to run with this. But a shooting in Texas, horrible thing. I've got a report on it. Check this out.
3 men are under arrest after a shooting at a Katy baseball tournament that left a youth coach wounded.
The shooting happened at RAC Katy over the weekend during a tournament. The Waller County Sheriff's Office said Mahmoud Rababa, Ahmad Mawed, and Mustafa Matalga fired guns from a nearby pasture in the direction of the game. A witness from the scene said one of the coaches took a bullet to the shoulder, then immediately went to the ground to cover all nearby kids to keep them safe. He is expected to be okay.
So again, this is a thing. Now, again, these three individuals, they've been arrested, and this is it's concerning to me because again, sometimes you hear reports from the media and you just can't quite place it, right? You go, oh man, how unfortunate. Somebody was shot, and these guys were shooting at a nearby field, and this is just horrible. But it doesn't always work out that way, right? There's usually a little bit more to the story. And from what I could see, here's the little more that we've got. 3 suspects arrested after a youth baseball coach was shot during a pregame prayer with his players. The suspects, Mahmoud Abdel Salam Rabah, Ahmad Mawed, Mustafa Mohammed Maktagla, all of these guys, 23, 21, 27 years old. According to the Waller County Sheriff's Office, the men fired their guns from a nearby pasture, as you heard in the report, towards the baseball field. The coach was reportedly saying a prayer before the game with his team when he was shot in the shoulder. KHOU 11, Andy Bays, is reporting that he literally took the bullet for a child that was to his left. So thankfully, we avoided a major disaster. Still very, very emotional over it. And that's one of the players from the Houston Warriors, the founder of the Houston Warriors, Andy Bays. And the field, known as the RAC, is where these guys were doing their target practice, right? They were 600 yards away. Now, here's another vantage point of this. Somebody saying people shoot on their land all the time, and at the time we were unaware of anything in season. Now that we have more information, we know that there were 3 individuals target practicing 600, 700 yards away. Now, somebody else sent me a separate note, and I'm just going to share some of what's on here because, again, I don't know the entirety of all of this, but very interesting stuff that's being reported. So let's see here. The suspects that were charged, 3 men were arrested and charged with deadly conduct and discharge of a firearm. All right, I gave you these. One of them is a Lebanese migrant given permanent residency during the Biden administration. Let me see here. The other person became a citizen in 2023, despite having prior drug arrests, which is interesting. And here's where it gets dicey. according to this reporting here that somebody sent me from Amy Meck. Listen to this. Mr. Ahmed Mawed, attends Masjid ar-Rahman, which is been in the hot seat, according to him here. Records show roughly $90,000 in state funds were approved to go to this particular mosque. And the question they're saying is that why is the state of Texas providing financial support to a religious organization, in particular one that's been embroiled with some issues in the past? And what they're talking about is they're saying in 2014, the United Arab Emirates designated this particular organization a terrorist organization along with Al-Qaeda and ISIS. Now, again, that's a foreign country, right? That's not the U.S., that's the UAE. And the reason why, they were saying that the sermons and recitations of their holy book that were promoted at this particular organization were branded pitted Christians versus Jews. And why does everything disappear as I'm reading it? I tell you, it's hard to get through this. Forgive me. But let me see where I left off here. This is right where it's getting interesting. Anyway, some controversy to say the least. Oh, here we go. Sermons and recitations promoted by MAS Katie included verses branding Christians and Jews as disbelievers, warning their children are fuel for fire, quote unquote, threatening humiliating punishment, end quote, and cursing them to, quote, hell forever, end quote, alongside Pharaoh. This is very interesting, right? Despite these allegations and concerns, guess what? Not a whole lot of anything was done. Now, again, this could be anti this organization propaganda. It could be a million different things could be going on. But the point is, if there was, right, my overall question here is, if a foreign government did indeed say that this organization is deemed radical in the United Arab Emirates, why are we not a little bit more vigilant of what's going on? And should we just sit back and say, oh, they were just doing target practice near a baseball field? Got it. No problem. No reason to believe that this was somehow targeted, that it miraculously happens in the middle of a prayer or at the beginning of a prayer, and with this, alleged allegations here of anti-Christian rhetoric. Makes me think, what is going on? Well, we know that in Texas there's been a big push over a lot of different things, many different things, lots of different directions, right? And one of the things I'm talking about here is the creation of a what they're calling a Muslim-centric community, right? And I don't mean a community where Muslims live. That's not what I mean. What I'm talking about is a actual housing development where it's designed, to attract area Muslims, but also made some accommodations to only serve Muslims in some of the businesses. And this was, I'm going to say, viewed as unconstitutional, with the Texas Constitution and whatnot. So they decided to push back and sued, and Governor Abbott ended up signing a bill against this. And I think it's called the No Sharia Law Bill in Texas. Now, something similar is being considered at the federal level. But I do have a clip. I think we have a clip. Mr. Good, do we have a clip of Governor Abbott on this particular bill? Let her rip.
No Sharia law in Texas is now strengthened.
The ceremonial signing met with cheers in McKinney. Governor Abbott, flanked by lawmakers who pushed through HB 4211 in response, they say, to Epic City, a Muslim-centric community planned on the edge of Collin County, accused of housing discrimination.
This law prevents them from creating no-go zones. It prevents them from selling or renting land only to people who follow Islam.
Collin County State Rep Candy Noble co-authored the bill, citing Epic City's own words.
They said, we will limit sales to only persons we believe will contribute to the overall makeup of our community.
All lies, argues Epic City's attorney.
To be resolved by Texas law and Texas courts, not Sharia law.
So again, Governor Abbott taking this measure just a little bit further. And this is, again, one of those things that I think is we're just starting to see how things are shaping up. I saw a very interesting video, one that blew me away, honestly. I was left a little jaw dropped, of a congressional candidate burning a Quran. And you've probably seen it. It's been on social media for a hot minute. But this is something that, in my opinion, I'm saying, this is not good, right? To say the least, it's not good. I don't want to sit here and rail against Muslims. That's really not my position. But I am going to say if you're a Christian, if you're a believer, that type of thing, you want to make sure that your legacy, your future is what you make of it, right? And that's what we're seeing. We're seeing it globally. And this is not something new, right? I think history has shown us how things can get. So before things get any crazier, right? Because I would say this is pretty crazy. You get coaches getting shot. You've got laws being passed to stop religious law from going into effect. All sorts of things that I never thought we'd be having a conversation about in 2025. So we're going to get your thoughts and reactions on that as we progress throughout the show this evening. I also want to get a bird's eye view of something that I find very interesting. And that is, what is the perspective of someone that was trafficked, someone that dealt with Epstein, someone that actually had an interaction with this monster? And we're oftentimes hearing about Epstein and Trump, Epstein and this one, Epstein and that one, but what the real damage, right? What did he go to jail for? And he went to jail for trafficking and for, whatever other crimes he was guilty of. But we don't often hear from that side, except for, Virginia Giuffre and the other ones. So I want to zero in on that. And straight ahead, we're going to have a conversation with Sarah McCarthy. She's the author of Blue Butterfly, Inside the Diary of an Epstein Survivor. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
Well, thank you, Rich, and thank you for everything. I know you very well, and I listen, but I have a lot of people that listen, and they love your show, and I appreciate it very much.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, amigos, so we continue the conversation with Sarah McCarthy. Sarah McCarthy's book is called Blue Butterfly, Inside the Diary of an Epstein Survivor. And I want to get into this, how the whole book came about. And Sarah McCarthy, welcome.
Hi, Rich. Thank you for having me on.
My pleasure. So talk to me about this. This is your interview of someone that was an Epstein survivor, and you put this book together. Is that correct?
That is correct. Juliet Bryant's a longtime friend of mine. It was her story, a very devastating story. And when I first heard it, I knew I had to write a book about it.
Well, tell us the history. I know this happened about 23 years ago, roughly around this time.
Well, yeah, interesting that we're having this interview on this date, Rich, because exactly 23 years ago to this day, on the 26th of September 2002, Epstein flew into Cape Town with an entourage of people, including Bill Clinton. We also had some celebrities on board, Kevin Spacey and Chris Tucker. And on that fateful night, Juliet was recruited in Cape Town.
What did that entail? How did that work? I'm guessing she lived in Cape Town and these guys were visiting, and how did they meet her? Give us a background.
So she was a psychology student at the time, studying at the University of Cape Town. She was also modeling part-time, and she just happened to be out that evening with a couple of friends in a bar called Cafe Dama. She was approached by a very beautiful African-American lady who said that some guy was harassing her and could she chat with Juliet. I think it was just an in, basically. When she met Juliet, she said, "Oh, I'm here with a very high-profile billionaire." She described him as the King of America. He was traveling to South Africa with Bill Clinton, and she said he had connections with Victoria's Secret and that he could launch her modeling career in New York. So that very same evening, they went to a restaurant in Cape Town called Beluga. And there she met Epstein with Bill Clinton and Kevin Spacey and an entourage of other people.
Fascinating story. Now, tell me more, I guess, about what happens here. So Juliet meets these people. I'm guessing she becomes, intrigued by the potential of advancing her career and meeting some influential people. How does this unfold?
Yeah, exactly. Well, she only met them for around 10 minutes. They were all mid-meal, and they all stood up to meet them. One interesting thing is when she met Bill Clinton, he held onto her hand for a very long time while he was speaking to somebody else at the table, and she specifically said that made her feel uncomfortable. She met Epstein. She was obviously more interested in the celebrity, she said. But the lady that introduced them said, "Oh, he would like to see you tomorrow. Could you come along to the Cape Grace Hotel where they were staying, and could you bring your modeling portfolio so that he could see it, because he's very interested in you?" So she did go along to the hotel the next day. She was also invited to watch Bill Clinton's speech. He was on a tour giving speeches about HIV/AIDS, and she went along to the tour and watched him say his speech. And then afterwards, she went back to the hotel and showed Epstein her book. But what was interesting is that he had managed to set up what appeared to be a fake casting. He had 3 girls pose as Karen Model's agents, and they all paged through her book and looked very excited about it and commented on her photos. After which she realized that none of those girls were model agents. They were all, in fact, working for Epstein. When they said, "Oh, your photos are amazing, you could go through and meet Epstein," he then asked her a lot of very leading questions about her relationship with her family. Did she have a boyfriend? All the questions that he would have been profiling her. And after that, she got told, "Oh, he's very interested in you." And it took him only about 2 weeks to organize her a modeling visa for the United States, and about 3 weeks to fly her back to the United States.
Wow. Well, I want to pick up right there when we return. Folks, we are on with Sarah McCarthy. She's the author of Blue Butterfly, Inside the Diary of an Epstein Survivor. 23 years ago today, her friend Juliet was introduced and then subsequently trafficked by the Epstein machine. And I want to hear more about it and see how things ended up. So stick with me. This is quite interesting. And we're coming right back with Sarah McCarthy. Don't go anywhere.
The best opinions. This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, amigos, welcome back. We continue with our conversation with Sarah McCarthy. She's the author of the book Blue Butterfly, Inside the Diary of an Epstein Survivor. And 23 years ago today, Jeffrey Epstein arrived in Cape Town, South Africa, with several high-profile Americans in tow. And as we're hearing this story, a young 20-year-old Juliet Bryant was lured into what would become likely a very harrowing and revealing experience that has been chronicled in this book, Blue Butterfly, Inside the Diary of an Epstein Survivor. Sarah McCarthy, let's pick up where you left off.
Sure. So what makes Juliet's story completely different is that she exposes Epstein's medical crimes. Like Annie Farmer, she was taken to Zorro Ranch in New Mexico, and she has a very vivid flashback from her time there, which was June 2004. She woke up naked in a laboratory with a female doctor operating on her without her knowledge or her consent. And to this day, she
organ
believes,
harvesting?
No, she believes that they were taking her eggs.
Oh, wow.
Yes. And she had, since that day, so what was unusual about that trip with Epstein, it was the only trip that he didn't abuse her. He also took her into a room and gave her what she described as a pelvic exam. And then she had this flashback. Not only that,
You're saying Epstein did this exam himself, or he had the doctor do it?
Yes, he had it. He did it, and she described it as something like a pelvic exam. She said it was very strange. He had never done that before.
Wow.
It wasn't sexual. It was more medical. So what Blue Butterfly does is upend the whole Epstein story, which is about sex trafficking. Because as Brad Edwards, the lawyer who's represented over 200 Epstein victims, says, a small fraction of the girls were being trafficked to other men. And actually, a small fraction of the men were taking up on that offer. There was something else that was going on. And Juliet has reiterated this over and over again. There was more to the story. And Blue Butterfly goes into great detail and backed up by research how Epstein was engaged in medical crimes, unauthorized medical procedures.
What do you think the purpose behind this was?
I think he was harvesting eggs, and I'm not sure what his nefarious agenda was, but he was not only doing that, I also believe that he was doing some sort of mind control experiments on the girls. A lot of them seem to have sort of fragmented memories, and a lot of them seem to suffer from symptoms such as bipolar or PTSD. And that seems to be a pattern across.
I know that PTSD can cause you to have a very spotty memory. Happens to people coming back from war, as well as people involved in accidents, and I'm guessing people that have been trafficked as well. But this is fascinating. Now, have you heard any corroboration from other victims? I don't think I have heard about medical exams and things of that nature.
Juliet was contacted by one investigative journalist by the name of Kobe Summers, who said to Juliet, your story is very important. I know of one other survivor who woke up in a laboratory-type setting. When I contacted Kirby to get more information, all she said is that survivor is now dead. But I believe that by publishing this book, and this is the main motivation actually behind publishing the book, is that more survivors will come forward. Remember, Epstein was surrounding himself by the top scientists. And specifically, I've done a deep dive into this. A lot of them were cognitive scientists, so psychologists and people who had expertise on how the brain functioned. Epstein was also fascinated with how the brain functioned. He sat on Harvard's Mind, Brain, and Behavior Committee. He employed people who, like a neurosurgeon, as his science advisor, and he surrounded himself with these people. Juliet also said he constantly quizzed her, giving her riddles, and he said to her, oh, your brain works very differently to other people's brains. There was something more going on here. It's not just about sex trafficking and sex abuse.
Fascinating. Now, Sarah, let everyone know how they get a copy of your book should they, want to learn more about your story, Juliet's story.
Absolutely. The book is set for release in November, but it is available for pre-order at trineday.com.
And give us the website one more time.
trineday.com. Trine Day Publishing.
Well, thank you for joining us tonight. I appreciate it. Good luck with the book. I'm sorry to hear about the story. Glad that, Juliet survived. And as there's more information, and updates, I'm looking forward to hearing them. Sarah McCarthy, author of Blue Butterfly. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard.
You're welcome. And amigos, I want to get your thoughts, reactions on that, plus a whole lot of other things that are going on today. Very interesting stuff that's happening today. You've got some change of course with Washington Democrats on the government shutdown. I'll give you a little bit of a weigh-in on that. Plus, we'll continue talking about this shooting that occurred in Texas and everything else that's going on in America at night.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
All right, amigos, welcome back. We continue our conversation. I want to hear from you guys, the American people, 833-482-5337, 833-4VALDEZ. And check this out. Just an interesting story that I saw here in the, what do I look at? This is the New York Post from a little while ago, 7:35 p.m. Eastern time, so about 2 hours ago. Check this out. Howard Rubin, ex-New York City financier with ties to George Soros, arrested for allegedly sex trafficking women to a sex dungeon that he had in a penthouse. This is according to the feds. This retired financier worked for many years at George Soros' investment firm, allegedly tortured former Playboy models, wow, and other women in a Midtown Manhattan penthouse. He turned it into a bondage, domination, sadomasochism, sex dungeon for about a decade. This is according to the New York Post and federal prosecutors. Howard Rubin, 70 years old, was busted by the feds at his Fairfield, Connecticut home this morning on sex trafficking charges for allegedly luring women, dozens of women, to his New York City apartment between 2009 and 2019, where he restrained them, beat them, electrocuted them, and more, according to the U.S. Attorney's Office in Brooklyn, New York. The money manager, known to many as Howie or simply as H, is worth tens of millions of dollars. He even appeared to revel in the stomach-turning encounters and text messages with his personal assistant, Jennifer Powers, who's also facing sex trafficking charges tied to this same scheme. Wow, that's wild. As alleged, the defendants used Rubin's wealth to mislead and recruit women to engage in a commercial sex act, where Rubin then tortured women beyond their consent, causing lasting physical and or psychological pain, in some cases, physical injuries. And again, this is according to the United States Attorney in Brooklyn, Joseph Nocella. Rubin, who is a father of three and a successful ex-Wall Street guy with a 30-year career, allegedly abused the women in a swanky hotel or his luxury penthouse near Central Park that he leased for $18,000 a month between the years of 2011 and 2017. On the west side of 57th Street, penthouses and bedrooms, one of them was soundproofed and painted red, nicknamed The Dungeon. He had a device that was used to shock or electrocute the women, according to the feds. The room also had a cross and a bed with restraints where women would be bound and gagged, according to the authorities. Man, this is crazy. The article goes on, but I think you get the point. Final point here. The prosecutors argued that Rubin was a flight risk because of the stiff prison sentence attached to these crimes, and he has about $74 million in an account in the Cayman Islands at his disposal. So, interesting stuff. And again, I think we've all heard about things like this, right? In one way or another, some sort of freaky, crazy type of thing. But interesting to me, and I really do find this interesting. With all the money in the world, why on earth do you have to have such strange proclivities, right? To want to torture women. I mean, I guess one could argue, well, with all that money, you feel like you have all the power, and it's kind of like a God complex. Okay, I get that, but I mean, I would imagine that with a decent personality and a good job, it's not going to be that hard to meet a lot of women, right? I mean, I know guys that don't make nearly as much money that do fantastic with women. It's really not that hard, I think, if you just put yourself out there. This is just crazy stuff, and I guess people, like anything else, trying to make sense of crazy is always a fool's errand, and that's what I'm doing right now. It's kind of like saying, what would possess somebody to go and write things on bullets and then shoot ice people, right? What would do that? The only, I guess, answer I come up with, it's always the same answer. It's evil, right? Evil is what evil is. It's oftentimes inexplicable. That is the darkness. That is the enemy of our soul. That's how it works. These guys were not supposed to understand this type of evil, the people that harm children, the people that harm the innocent. You're not supposed to understand that. It's very easy to understand. Nice guy, mild-mannered guy, lives in the suburbs, decided to avenge something that happened to his child, right? Let's say you hurt somebody's kid, or worse, and the dad goes bananas on you. I think most people hear that and go, man, that sucks, but shoot. Well, I think most people would say, I don't blame the guy, right? Things like that, it makes sense. It makes sense. Somebody comes into your house, attacks you one way or another, and, you take action and you win. People go, oh, who told him to break into that guy's house? But when you hear about just sordid and very weird things that we don't get, it's hard to wrap your mind around things like that, about these dungeons and whatnot. Like, who lacks that type of humanity? Well, obviously these guys, at least allegedly. But speaking of shooters, I'm looking at this here. Joshua John, Jahn, he's ID'd as the anti-ICE gunman who opened fire on the Dallas facility 2 days ago, killing, I thought it was 3 migrants, but it says 1 here. Anyway, this guy, I see him, look, he's a fisherman. He's the pictures that they have of him. And it's like I said, it's a fool's errand to try and figure out why people get like that. Earlier today, I made a comment. I wish I had it in front of me because I thought it was an interesting comment. Because while I sit here and I say that it's unhelpful for anybody, but as of late we've seen it on the left, to demonize Trump, call him Hitler, this and that, to say about the rest of us, it's a logical conclusion to say, no wonder they're escalating to shooting people now, because they're being radicalized by the left. And I believe that can be true. But I do think that it is a logical fallacy. I don't believe that if you tell someone that somebody is Hitler, the devil, or bad, that eventually they're going to get up and kill people. And the reason why? Because I've been hearing it for years. And it's not that I'm somehow magic or immune. Most of us have been hearing this stuff for years, right? Anybody who's listening to talk radio right now, right, between these hours of the evening, it's likely that either you happen to be in the car, maybe you happen to be at work, you happen to listen to the radio all day, and that's probably more likely, right, that you are a talk radio person. You enjoy talk radio. You like knowing what's going on in the news, and you like to tune in. And if you are a fan of talk radio, the news talk format, then yes, you know full well that we've been demonized. In fact, we've done some demonization of our own to the other side, right? Yet I've never seen the droves and droves of MAGA people, or before there was MAGA, it was the Tea Party, and before it was the Tea Party, we were just regular conservatives and Republicans and whatever. And I've never seen this, right, where you say, oh my gosh, the left is destroying America, right? I've probably said that 1,000 times, easy. Never heard anybody ever say, I went and did this, I shot someone, I hurt someone because Rich Valdez said the left was destroying America and I love America. And there's a reason why. And it's not because the left are mentally unstable and those to the right of the center are more mentally stable. You may want to make that inference, but I think that would be a logical fallacy too. It's because there are people that do evil things. And it doesn't make sense for us to try and justify evil with our logic. And that's the bottom line. I can say things about the left that I don't like and criticize them and never mean them any harm. And they can say things about me and the things that I believe that we should all have a right to the First Amendment, the Second Amendment. Shoot, all 10, go figure, right? And that doesn't mean that we should harm each other. But there are people that believe we should harm each other. And it doesn't come from the disagreement. It comes from their embrace of evil. I'll be right back.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
Thanks for what you do. You have so many people. You ask the questions that if a viewer had a microphone, they would ask that question, and you seem to always ask it right at the right time. So God bless you, my friend.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
Breaking news, the man who opened fire at NFL headquarters in July did in fact have CTE, that progressive fatal brain disorder linked to repeated head trauma. That's according to a medical examiner. The shooter, Shane Tamura, blamed the NFL for, quote, concealing the dangers to players' brains to maximize profits. That claim found in a note in his pocket after the July shooting that killed 4 people. Tamura died of a self-inflicted gunshot wound.
So again, that's the shooter. This is the for everybody in Radioland who can't see the article I'm talking about, not the white guy with the stringy hair who shot at the ICE people that I was just talking about. This is the black guy with the small afro who had a rifle and kicked in the door at the building here in Manhattan on close to 50th Street. And this Shane Tamura, and they're saying his brain showed the telltale signs of chronic traumatic encephalopathy, known as CTE. And this is something that I've had a little bit of experience with because my dad had a traumatic brain injury that led to this. And, of course, what they call traumatic brain injury related dementia. And to make it quick, because we have the music about to kick in, it does make you aggressive. It does make you lack impulse control. It is a serious thing. And I would say somebody in that situation shouldn't have a gun. Or access to knives. Honestly, I don't think they should even be allowed to go outside by themselves because you never know how crazy things can get. But then again, my dad was in his late 70s and early 80s when he went through this because of a fall. I don't know the extent of Mr. Tamura, but either way, I think everybody knows if you're going to be a boxer, you're going to be a football player, you're going to get knocked around and it could be bad for your brain. Hasta la próxima. God bless. I'm Rich Valdez.
Live from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez, America's favorite late night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S, at Rich Valdez on all of the social media. Friday night edition of the program, live and national, 7 minutes past the top of the hour. And we're going to go in tonight. We got lots to talk about. 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ. And if you want to join the show, I recommend calling in earlier rather than later. Fridays tend to be very busy nights on the phones. And I take as many calls as I can. I try to give people a fair amount of time. And because I do, I get a bad rap for that, by the way. Some people are like, I don't want to hear those people. I want to hear what you have to say. Or I don't want to hear what you have to say. I want to hear the guest. Or I don't want, everybody has an opinion. The most recent one I got was, oh my gosh, you push people off the phone too quickly. I have a timer on my screen. I could see. Nobody should be on the phone for 3 straight minutes and not have said anything. So I try, and not that I push them out on purpose. I have to take breaks, right? There's a whole profession that we do here, right? We count seconds. Everybody looks at the time and they're like, oh, it's 10:08. No, it's 10:08 and 22 seconds. And right, we got to count these seconds and we got to get to somewhere at a certain time. That's how the whole radio game works. So if I have to talk faster or get out quickly, it's not that I'm trying to be rude. It's that, as the late, great Jim Bohannon used to say, the clock is a cruel mistress. The wisdom of those that came before us. Anyway, I want to get into a bunch of things. Again, Open Phone America, we're going to get into that shortly, 833-482-5337. And I want to get into a little bit this hour with you guys, a little bit about what I feel is happening today, right? A lot of people having debate on a number of issues. Healthcare is always amongst them. Talking to a guy, an international person of sorts, right? I believe he was born in the United States, but to a very French family. And like he has an accent and everything, you know? So maybe he was born in France and then came here. But I'm pretty sure he was born here. I know his dad and his family, they were born in France. And bottom line here is, we were talking and he was like, I really think it would be great if we had free health care here in America. And he's younger, right? He's 20-something. Nice kid. Very smart. Very, very smart. Studying to be a doctor. And we're talking, and I said, well, tell me more. And as we got into it, and I just asked him a couple of questions, and I was like, when people, because I know different people from the family, I said, when people in the family have a pressing medical need, do they do it abroad in Europe? Do they do it wherever they are? Or do they come to the U.S. and seek? He just started laughing. He said, yep, you're right. 100% right. I said, well, I didn't say anything yet. He said, no, I figured it out. He said, we pay the doctors here a lot more than they would make anywhere else. And therefore, we get the best doctors and the best care. And I said, oh, tell me more. And he basically talked me into why the system that we have, while it has its flaws, brings about a situation that's good for the end user in many cases. Now, this was crystallized for me doing talk radio. Excuse me. I remember doing a show, might have been a Mark Levin show, honestly, and caller calls in and tells me, hey, I'm calling you from... I'm in Michigan, but I'm from Canada, and I know people who sneak in to Michigan to go to the ER, the emergency room, when they have heart problems. Because if they go to the hospital in Canada, where they lived, the wait time could be so long, they feared they would die. Now, hit pause on that, and now hit your rewind button to back when Barack Obama was talking about hope and change and saying, promoting the Obamacare plan. And he said, if you like your doctor, you can keep your doctor. Right? Remember that? That was the biggest lie ever. I think every last person that signed up for Obamacare lost their doctor. But the bigger issue there was that people very quickly decided and realized that if we were to socialize medicine to the degree that was initially reported with Obamacare, we would fall into the same situation that they have in Europe and in Canada and other places. And while some people think it's fantastic for your 11-year-old with a broken arm, when you're on vacation and you get an allergic reaction, for very catastrophic things, open heart surgery, things that are really life and death, if you're old and the government is the one in charge of healthcare, and you get a young person with a rare congenital heart issue, here you have a better shot at both of them getting the care they need than you do in some of these countries because, unfortunately, and again, from firsthand testimony to me, people telling me, I go there telling them my chest pain, I have chest pains or I'm having an issue, and they make me wait because I'm older than 58 or I'm older than 60 or whatever their age is. And they said, if you're younger, you'll get taken care of quicker. But if you're older, they kind of let you wait. And the older you are, the more you wait. Because it's their way of kind of filtering out the system. So you're, in effect, left to die. Now, with all the critique that we have on the American system, the last thing that we want you to do is die. And I'm talking about the perspective of Big Pharma, right? Big Pharma is, in effect, like the old school theory of the mob, right? The mob used to say, no, break his legs, rough him up, but don't kill him, right? Why did they talk like that? Well, because you would never pay their vig, right? The interest on your loan sharking deal or the extortion money or whatever it was, you were worth more to them alive than you were dead. Well, that's America, right? As long as Big Pharma can pump out medicine that the insurance companies can pay a ridiculously high amount of money for, and they have that whole scam going on, as long as that is going on, you get to live longer, albeit living with chronic illness, living with issues, right? So I'm not saying it's a perfect system. I just said you have a fighting chance here. So I don't know that there's a perfect system yet. I think maybe our system, minus the greed and with a whole lot of compassion, might be a really effective one. But all of that to say, I don't want to be in a situation where they say, well, if you were younger, we'd get you in faster. But if you're, now that you're, and again, I don't think they're explicitly saying these things. I think these are kind of things you have to kind of notice, wink and a nod type of thing. But irrespective of all that, I think you want to help people if you're able to help people. And ultimately, that's what it comes down to. If you can, you should. And it shouldn't come down to the government making a choice of what we can afford. And thankfully, that's usually not the case in the United States. Usually, right? I think in some cases it may be. Some poorer Americans may face that fate at one time or another. But I got to say, I grew up somewhat poor. And I say somewhat because if we were poor enough to live in the projects, we never did. And that might have been a pride thing. It might have been a safety thing. But we were poor. And people shouldn't be mistreated or at a loss for being poor. But what I'll tell you is this. I think I've seen plenty of poor people get a lot of good care and have access to the same stuff that a lot of other people have access to. And that's a good thing, right? We shouldn't say, hey, because you've got the good insurance, and that does happen. I'm not saying it doesn't. You're going to get the better place, and doctors or hospitals or clinics that become picky and choosy. I'm sure that does happen, but I think it happens to a lesser degree. My hope is that, and if I'm living in a bubble, then feel free to call me and pop that bubble. 833-482-5337, 833-4-Valdez. But something that bothers a lot of people, and this is something I agree with, because I'm a free market guy. I believe in a free market economy. And there are hospitals all across this country that charge different prices for different things. And guess what? You can go to different car dealerships and they charge different prices for different cars. And that's cool. But you know what you're getting into when you go to the auto dealer. Sadly, when you go to your doctor, and let's say one of your colleagues at work goes to their doctor, you're not necessarily going to pay the same thing, right? One doctor might charge $800 for a visit, while the other one might charge $225. And it's that discrepancy or that disparity that I think causes a lot of mixed reaction in the healthcare market. So there are people out there that have been advocating for transparency in pricing, and that's something I think that is a good thing. So I want to talk about that straight ahead with the founder and chairman of Patients' Right Advocate, Cynthia Fisher. She's joining us straight ahead to talk about that and a couple of other things. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
By the way, your ratings are up. Congratulations. I had somebody. It's always nice to check. I like to see, even if they're friends, I like to see how are they doing. Are people listening, right?
That's
but
right.
You're doing great.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
Because hospitals and insurance companies get away with hiding their prices from all of us, and literally they can charge whatever they want. You know, it's like you sign up and say, yes, I'll pay. You trust the hospital, but then you get home and the bill is, it's whatever, you know, which pretty much feels like some form of extortion to me. That's what it seems like to me.
It's a form.
But you had an executive order where you created a federal rule forcing hospitals and insurers to publish all their prices.
Yep.
Right? So that people would be able to know, okay, if an MRI costs $600 here and it's $5,000 there, then I can go here and save myself money.
Right.
But that hasn't even agree on a lot of things. But I think you both acknowledge how horribly rigged the healthcare system is against the American people.
That is President Trump on with Theo Vaughn discussing the transparency of prices in healthcare. And while many of us, I think, don't look at this as a problem that, you know, we face immediately, as I'm getting older, you know, now I'm 47 now, I go to the doctor a little bit more than I used to. And I'm always like, you know, when I get these bills, I'm like, I thought I had insurance. Why am I paying a bill? You know, and then I think, I don't know what it costs. How could I be surprised at the bill if I never knew what this cost to begin with? So I want to get into that because I think this is something that, again, one more thing that Americans need to worry about, and one that we probably shouldn't have to worry about, but we do. And I want to talk about this disparity in and really the lack of transparency that I think exists in this particular market with Cynthia Fisher. She's the founder and chairman of Patients' Right Advocate, and she's with us now. Cynthia Fisher, welcome.
Thank you so much, Rich. It's great to be on with you.
Likewise, it's a pleasure. So let's talk about this. I know you guys, you know, you do a lot of advocacy work, and I think that's important, and letting people like me know that there's a problem that we didn't even know was a problem, but in fact is a problem. And talk to me about, I guess, the progress that you're making with, you know, with advocating for this topic, because I know President Trump has signed some executive orders, and I think he did another one earlier this year. But I don't think we're out of the dark yet. Your thoughts?
Yes, Rich. You know, as Theo Vaughn was interviewing the president, it was really President Trump in his first administration that put in place hospital price transparency, healthcare price transparency for both hospitals and insurance companies having to post all of their prices. I mean, think about it. It's brilliant to make the healthcare industrial complex have to behave like every other market in our economy, because, you know, as long as hospitals and insurance companies hide their prices, they can charge whatever they want. And just as you said, that's exactly what they're doing. And unfortunately, the prices that we don't get to see in advance ending up as many times overcharges to the patients after you get your care. Weeks and months later, oftentimes the bills don't even reflect the actual care that the patient received. They're far higher. And so to have accountability in billing and in payment, you have to have a price. In every other market in our economy, we would not accept not knowing prices up front. And why? Because consumers benefit from knowing competition. And healthcare providers do better when they compete on quality and price. Where are we? The president did the executive order. We had made a lot of progress in the first Trump administration, where the hospitals started showing their prices. Over a third of them across the country, as we reported before, were showing their prices in clear spreadsheets. So you and I could see that, for instance, in Chicago at Rush Hospital, a dosage of a drug called Rituxan, we could see what the prices were. And guess what? They are not the same based upon whatever insurance plan a patient has. We saw wide price variation. In most cases in the same hospital, we were finding that hospital prices vary at least 10 to 11 times in the same hospital. So for instance, we saw the drug Rituxan at Rush being priced at around $900 for one plan, and then a Cigna HMO plan over $9,200 for the same exact drug, the same day, a different patient. And
So
that's
it's
just
kind of
not
like a
fair.
legalized insurance scam.
Well, they're both in cahoots. Why? Because both of the insurance companies and the hospitals make more money by keeping prices in the dark and charging as much as they want. The higher the price, the more the insurance carrier makes. Because the true payer, the true purchaser of healthcare is all of us, the American people, the patients. We pay out of our paychecks as we share premium costs with our employers, and the employers pay out of budgets and earnings. And then the second part is we pay out of take-home pay with deductibles and anything that's not covered by the insurance plan.
Yeah, that's the tricky part. And you're right. Up until recently, for me, I never looked at that twice, right? Because usually when you're younger, you don't really have that many things on there. You don't have to go as often. You go once a year, if that, and you're like, yeah, I'm good, I'm covered. But as you get older, you're like, oh, you should come in for this. Your routine whatever exam, your routine this. You got to come for blood work. And my doctor sent me to a specialist for something. I went there, and then I got a bill in the mail for, specialists cost more. And I guess that makes sense. But it's like you don't know. And made me think this is really something that's fascinating. And some of the price disparities that I've seen, and some of them what you're talking about, 900 versus 9,000, that's huge. Like, how do we justify something like that? Hold your thought. I don't want to interrupt you, but we're about to hit a break. So let me remind everybody who we're on with. Folks, we're on with Cynthia Fisher, founder and chairman of the Patients' Rights Advocate. And PRA has recently put out a report exposing how hospitals are leaving customers without fairness and financial certainty with actual prices. So we're going to continue our conversation on price transparency, what President Trump did to kind of transform healthcare with his executive order, what we can expect to come straight ahead, and how these disparities still exist, because that's quite a thing. I want to learn more about that. We're coming right back with Cynthia Fisher. Don't go anywhere.
Rich Valdez, who again will do a fine job, and I know you'll enjoy listening to him.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
I wanted to let you know about two important rules that the federal government made in the early 2020s. They were supposed to help us all as consumers understand the cost of healthcare in the market, and that's both on the hospital side and the insurance side. And so these rules are called the Transparency and Coverage Rule, and that applies to insurers, and the Hospital Price Transparency Rule. So you all know that there's not really a marketplace that's functioning to keep control over costs in healthcare. And one of the reasons is that nobody really understands what the costs are going to be, right? So you go to the hospital and you don't know what the bill is going to be for, or you can't really research ahead of time when you're getting your insurance exactly what the negotiated rates are for certain services, and neither can your providers. So these two rules that were enacted were really aimed at increasing transparency so that we can drive down costs in the market with better competition, more understanding of, okay, if hospital A is charging $10,000 for this procedure and hospital B is charging $8,000 for that procedure, and I feel really good about hospital B, I can save money by going to hospital B. But you have to have that information in front of you at the right time in order to make that decision. So the government enacted these rules, and it's so great that we have them, except the hospitals and the insurers really aren't complying in the spirit of the law. They've complied in the sense that they've provided these enormous files with information that are completely unreadable.
That's Dr. Elizabeth Potter indicating to us that while the rules that President Trump put into place in his first term were great for consumers, great for healthcare, sadly, a lot of hospitals aren't posting the prices that they're supposed to be posting. And we still have these disparities, like our guest pointed out, where you have the same medication, same treatment. One person pays $900, the other person pays $9,000. How do we justify that? Let's get back to our guest, Cynthia Fisher, founder and chair of Patients' Rights Advocate. Cynthia Fisher, you heard Dr. Potter. What's going on here?
Yes, well, clearly the hospitals and the insurance companies have made it very difficult to see the data. And even got worse during the Biden administration when President Biden gave them an out in the hospitals to say they could just post estimates and they could put it in the form of complex algorithms, not dollars and cents. Can you believe that, Rich? I mean, who wants to do complex calculus to try to calculate a price?
It sounds like what the government would do.
Yes, exactly. And so, thank goodness the beginning of this year when President Trump came in, he was not so happy that Biden had rolled back. What was he trying to do is lower the cost of health care for all Americans by giving us visible access to all prices in health care. So he put forth this year a new executive order for radical price transparency, making sure that all hospitals and insurance companies post all actual prices. And that rule is to be course corrected and put into play at the end of this year. So we'll see big change for next year. But unfortunately, because of the Biden rollbacks, the hospitals played more games by simply cutting it almost in half to visibility of these prices. But for those prices that we can see, not only do we see the prices vary by about 10 times within the same hospital, so you can get an MRI for $300 or pay over $3,000. So who would want to pay over $3,000? It's unnecessary because it's the same exact machine in the same hospital. But then we can see across hospitals within the same state, sometimes you will see as much as 40 times more price difference across the hospitals within the same state. That's huge. That's a huge factor for price differentiation. So you're looking at maybe paying $12,000 for an MRI, where that would be just total overcharging. But let me tell you why price transparency is so important.
Yeah.
Because price transparency in healthcare will enable all of us to stop the overcharging. Why? Because we, by law, are supposed to have prices up front. It is our right, before we get any planned or scheduled care, to get prices first. And then when you have prices first, we can shop and compare. And look, Rich, with the onset of artificial intelligence or Google search engines, for instance, you could imagine just putting in your zip code location and looking at the comparison of prices by your plan across imaging centers, across laboratories, across hospitals within your location. And then you would be able to say, wait, I want to know also what the quality difference is, right? And for the first time, you would be able to see price and quality variation and allow the industry to have to compete on our business rather than us being overcharged and surprised. Every single medical bill. Yes, every single medical bill is a surprise if you don't know the price. And look, the other thing that prices have been doing since we got this right by law from President Trump is, for those people where we can look at prices from different hospitals, we can compare it, we can know a market price. And so what we're finding is so many people in this country, over 100 million people have medical debt. And in many cases, if they can't afford the care, because sometimes patients are finding their insurance carrier denies their coverage. We had a woman in California come to us who had a ruptured appendix, and her insurance carrier nor her hospital gave her the price. She knew as she was going to the hospital, first she knew she needed to have an appendectomy, and she couldn't get a price. And she got in the car and went to the closest hospital and ended up having an emergency appendectomy.
Mm-hmm.
Her billing was over $250,000. And then her insurance company denied it. I mean, that's life-changing. And when we looked at the prices for an appendectomy and even one that had ruptured, we were finding that it should have been around $5,000 all in for her care under her insured plan. So once we were able to prove that she was way overcharged, the hospital forgave that $250,000. But that
Got to
was
catch them for them to say, all right, my bad.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what happened. And so the only way patients have a leg to stand on, so to speak, is to be able to have those prices to prove that they've been overcharged. And so I just would want all of your listeners to know it is our right by law today to have prices up front. It is our right by law to have hospitals give us the prices. So we recommend no one actually pay their bills until they get an itemized list of the actual bill, and they get an itemized list of what the price negotiated rates are with their insured carrier, or what the discounted cash price is if they're going to pay cash instead.
But now, wouldn't that land people like in collections and give them problems with their credit if they don't pay their bills?
Well, what happens is many people are so overcharged, they don't have the money to pay those bills. And yes, it puts them into bad credit. And yes, it puts them in, they've been denied coverage. It often, people are sued in our country by the hospitals themselves, or their surrogates will sue them and garnish wages and put liens on houses. But if you're in the process of writing letters, writing emails, putting in record writing that you need proof that that price and that bill is true, you're showing in good faith that you're trying to get the correct information to have accountability and integrity in the billing. And I'm going to tell you, nearly every charge is an overcharge, because what happens in the after the fact is both the hospitals and the insurance companies try to maximize their profits and put profits over patients. And so that's why oftentimes we're finding in most cases these bills have been overcharged.
Cynthia Fisher, founder and chairwoman of the Patients' Rights Advocate organization. Check out their website, patientsrightsadvocate.com. Cynthia Fisher, how do people find you online, like social media?
Well, they should look for us for patientrightsadvocate.org. And we will also show patients how to fight a bill if they feel they've been overcharged. We also have a team that will help for free. We help to try to help patients be able to fight these medical bills that may be overcharged. The other thing is we also show how to shop and have tools online. And we have all of the hospital's actual pricing files online for reporters and consumers. But what we can do also is they can come to us through LinkedIn or also on Twitter.
Outstanding. Patientsrightsadvocate.org. And Cynthia Fisher, again, I want to thank you for being here, bringing us up to speed on this interesting stuff. Hopefully you'll keep us up to speed as it progresses. Thank you.
Well, I do think it's positive because, we will see change in the coming year to pull back the curtain and shine the sunlight so that we can have prices up front, itemized bills, and payments that match, and once again restore trust back into our healthcare system.
Well, sounds good to me. Thank you, Cynthia Fisher. I appreciate it. Godspeed to you. Have a wonderful weekend. And amigos, your thoughts, your calls, your reactions to all of this and so much more straight ahead.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
All right, amigos, welcome back. It's Rich Valdez. We're live and national, 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ. Looking forward to hearing from all of you across America on this topic and everything else that's going on. By the way, there was a report that came out of Congress today. 274 undercover FBI agents or plainclothes FBI agents were at the January 6th riot. Meanwhile, if you remember, they said over and over, oh, we can't tell you. Oh, we don't know. I don't know. Nobody was there dressed as a MAGA person. Well, now we know otherwise. Big bombshell news today. I'm going to get to that on Monday because I really want to give it some time. And some of the people I want to talk with weren't available because it was Friday. But very interesting stuff. But I want to know your thoughts about Tylenol and autism and the cost of health care in America. Let's go to New Mexico, KINN. Check in with Sandra in Hurley. Go right ahead, Sandra.
Okay, I think that the information she just gave us is so important, and we needed to know that. And this whole experiencing in America now with no transparency is always should be a red flag. And what are they doing now behind our back? Okay, and another part of it is that the lack of transparency that happens on almost every front now in America is a real serious problem, because those situations like this lady with the $250,000 bill and these different companies that are taking advantage to such an incredible wipeout for the wealth of Americans is a much bigger problem, I believe, about the American Marxism in our country and the destruction of private property rights. Bills like that can move you off your property in a big hurry, okay?
Yep.
You happen to own one, okay?
100%.
Home
You're
or
right.
whatever.
If you're lucky enough to own a home and you owe somebody $200,000 by their accounting, and they actually win in court, guess what? They just took your property. It's an excellent point. And this is, in effect, how it was done in communist Cuba and other countries. These regimes would say, you did this, you did that, you are guilty of this, and we are confiscating this, we're doing that. And this is how they did their wealth transfers, all under the guise of, doing the right thing. Meanwhile, they were, stealing everything. So excellent point, Sandra.
Okay, good. I'm glad you think that. The other part is this. I don't even, hospitalization or going to hospitals these days, given all the people that are dying there, to me it's a death camp. Okay.
We were just talking during the break, Mr. Good and I, about we were talking about people get sick. They're like, I don't want to go there. I don't want to have to pay those bills. And you're giving us a different perspective of forget paying the bill. People go to the hospital, they don't come back out. And you're right. I think most people don't want to go to the hospital.
Mm-hmm. So actually, I've been talking for a long time that the medical people in our country, doctors and on every level, RNs and other people, should form, just like I guess we have Truth for Health in Arizona. This should be across the board, that we have reliable, good cost, good medical care, that we don't have to worry about losing our lives if we go in for something minor, okay?
My dad had a doctor, his primary care guy, and it was a fascinating conversation. I'll share a little bit with you. He was, he was probably a little younger than my dad. So, the good doctor, he was 70-something, I'm guessing. My dad was like 80 at the time. And he was complaining, he was a big liberal, and he was complaining to me about how He's like, yeah, I had to sell my practice. I said, oh, yeah. He's like, yeah, I sold it to the hospital. The hospital's buying all the little private practices. And he said, so now I'm an employee. He's like, I work here. I started this practice 50 years ago. And he said, now, now I work for the hospital. And I said, do they pay you well? And he said, yeah, thank God they pay me okay. And, he's like, and then he jokes to me, and he goes, yeah, and they paid me a really good, a pretty penny for my practice. So he didn't lose any money on the deal. He made money on the deal. But what was interesting was he goes on in the very next breath to tell me how our healthcare system is so screwed up because when he goes to bicycle, he likes bicycling, but he doesn't do it like in the park around the corner. He likes to go bicycling in Andalusia, Spain. And on one of his trips to Europe to go bicycling, he says, he met a doctor from somewhere else in Europe that was vacationing in Spain. And he says, that's what we need to do. We need to have a system where everybody just shows up, where doctors don't make millions and millions of dollars. But, whatever you are, you make the same amount of money. And he was making the case to me that a doctor should make as much as an auto mechanic. And then the system would work better. This came half a second after him telling me that he sold his practice for millions of dollars and he was getting paid a lot to show up once a week to maintain the patients that he sold to the hospital. And I just thought, this is just a fascinating conversation. He meant well in all of it, but he just, I guess he didn't see the larger picture that I was seeing, or, how interesting the irony was in that conversation. So, yeah, Sandra, I think there's a lot for us to learn and yet to apply in this particular situation. But I thank you for your call, and I do appreciate it. The rest of your calls and more are coming up right now. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, amigos, welcome back. We continue the conversation, and let us go. Let's see, where do I go? Paul, Boise, Idaho, KBFI in the building. Go right ahead, sir.
Thanks for taking my call, Rich. Yeah,
Yes, sir.
just personal note, my father practiced medicine for 44 years, and he had a real giving heart. He had some patients that were fishermen by season, and then when they were off season, they had to do other odd jobs and whatnot around the area where we lived. And he would do house calls for them for no charge, and he gave them our family phone number so that in case something came up right away, that they could call him at the house. And those doctors are days gone by. I know none of them like that. No house calls. And it's not lucrative. I mean, house calls, you can make money off it, but he didn't see the necessity of doing that. He made enough money from the other patients that he was able to do what he needed to do with his daughters. To send them to private Catholic.
He sounds like an amazing guy, but a great heart, and I'm glad he did that, a heart of service. And I wish there were more like him today. And I don't blame people per se. I think, some people just haven't seen that as an example. And the other side of it is, I think there's a lot of people that make it difficult to be nice these days, too. It's kind of a two-way street. Paul in Boise, thanks for the call, my brother, as always. And I see there's more people on hold. We're going to continue with our calls and more straight ahead. I'm Rich Valdez.
Live from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez, America's favorite late night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S, at Rich Valdez on all of the social media. Welcome to another hour of our program tonight. We're live and national, 7 minutes past the top of the hour. Looking forward to chatting with all of you guys. 833-482-5337, 833-4-Valdez. And I want to get into a bunch of stuff. It's Friday night, and I'm happy to kind of go all over the place tonight, as we do on many Fridays, but in particular this Friday. Why? Because, man, I tell you, sometimes in this game, if I can make it about me for a moment, I will. Thank you. Point of personal privilege. Man, this stuff gets to me. I know it gets to you too, right? Sometimes, how many times can I get on here and talk about the outrage of a shooting? And I don't mean that I'm not outraged. I just mean I get outraged out, right? I'm out of outrage. It's crazy. There was that shooting by these three Muslim guys, shooting the guy that was praying at the coach, praying at the baseball game. There was, days earlier, there was the shooting on the ICE facility. I mean, come on. And it's not the shooting I'm tired of. I'm not doing a PSA for the gun grabbing left. It's the violence. It's the attraction to evil. It's that battle. It's the fact that we are normalizing hate in some ways. And I don't believe this is in large part taking over society. I don't. I think in large part we are still a good people. But that small minority is growing. The minority of people that tend toward violence, the minority that shuns godliness and embraces evil and darkness is growing, from what I can see. And that's something I think we can all affect, right? It's the response. The other night, I don't know if it was last night or the night before, last call of the night, guy tells me, but Peter cut the guy's ear off. And my response to him was, listen, man, are we called to be like Peter, or are we called to be like Jesus? And again, if you're not a Christian and you listen to this show, that's fine. I'm not saying you have to be one. I hope you are. But my point here was, if we have a faith, stick with your faith. I'm the first one to say, my faith is fantastic. Not because it's mine, but because Christ is fantastic. I'm just the messy sinner of a person that's trying to get it together, right? And the only way you get it together is walking with the Lord. So I get it. I know which way true north is. But ultimately, the mistakes that I make are on me. They're not on other people, right? I'm responsible for me. And you have to take accountability for yourself. And I think in large part, most people do. Most are responsible people that aren't trying to do the wrong thing. However, every now and again, you come across some people that lack accountability, that lack integrity, that are trying to get over on society. And I know all about that. I grew up in an area that was kind of popularized by the immediate culture. Right? Getting over was what it was all about. But as you grow into your adulthood, you realize, you know what? You got to take accountability for things. But today I was at lunch, and one of the brightest people that I know, someone I respect greatly, is my oldest daughter, Jada. And she, like always, dropped a pearl of wisdom on me. And she, she made something so simple, so clear. And it's because of who she is, right? In her walk, in her faith, where she could immediately see things. And she's like, but you just got to know who you are, right? Know who you are. Know who you are in who God made you to be and what your purpose is in life. You don't have to have all the answers, but you just choose the right thing. And sometimes choosing the right thing is difficult for people because we're so consumed with ourselves. And that's the part that I think is, we are becoming lovers of ourselves. And that, I'm going to use the word that's overused in today's society, but that narcissism is detrimental. And I think it's taking root in society. Now, when you combine that with the fact that the Marxists have always used this divide and conquer strategy. They've always tried to find somebody who was somehow marginalized and exploit those people for their cause, right? So Castro would go to the people that were hungry and say, you know why you're hungry? Because those imperialist Yankees are making sure that we don't get food here. And so now, instead of being angry at their own president for not doing a damn thing for their island, they would get mad at the Americans. And I'm glad I learned when I was a kid, I don't get fat from what you eat, right? I can only get fat from what I eat. You have to take accountability for yourself. And if you teach that, I think, young enough, it'll almost make you Marxist proof, right? Marxism won't have that root, take root in you. However, when you combine this, men becoming lovers of themselves, and the, I'm going to call it evil, the evil Marxist way of recruiting people and getting people to be us versus them, you have the recipe for where we are today. Now, I am not Dr. Phil, although we've had him on the program and he's terrific. I'm not a shrink, psychologist, psychiatrist, or anything like that. I've done a little chaplaincy, but more than anything, I just call him like I see him. And that's the way I see this one. So I want to know your thoughts on what's happening in America with all of that stuff. And I also want to bring in another big gun, Dr. Chloe Carmichael. She's going to be joining us momentarily. But before I take my pause, I want to go to John, who's calling us from LaSalle, Illinois, WLS Line 2. John, go right ahead.
Hi. How are you? I listen to your show every time I'm out late and I'm driving around in a car. And I got hooked on AM radio talk show through like Rush Limbaugh and Chris Plant, and then now your show. And what you've been talking about is all 100% true all the way across the board. And I'm an artist and I'm very creative. But I don't understand. I kind of see the fuel that these young kids are getting. They're using their hate, and they're learning to kill people on these video games, and then they can do them and kill people in other countries, other people that are playing it. It's just a game. But is it a game, or does that fuel start when they're younger? And
right.
then
well,
now,
let me weigh in on that, because I've had this conversation with others, and some say yes, some say no. And again, my gut wants to say, look, I grew up listening to gangster rap. I listened to reggaeton, which is a very illicit music, but it's got a great rhythm to it. And I don't live that way, right? I've been watching rated R gangster movies since well before I was allowed to watch them. And I've never, ever acted out a rated R gangster scene. So I have to say that no. But is there a open door to groom or socialize a child to be less sensitive towards violence or something else? Yes, I think that is a possibility, and media and games can be a way to do that. And I think in and of themselves, they may serve that purpose. But it goes back to the point I was making. I think that you can inoculate yourself and your children. If you have a faith tradition like I do with Christianity, I think that's a great way to go. That will, if you know that you stand on your 10 commandments or the 2 commandments of the New Testament, then it doesn't really matter how many times you play Call of Duty. You're not going to go out and shoot people up because you don't embrace evil and you value life. But if you are a wayward person that may not be stable, that may not have that rooting in your own faith, then guess what? Maybe that does desensitize you just enough to get you to that point. That's an argument that can be made. I'm not ready to go there just yet, but I'm ready to say there's no way it helps, right? And if that's 100% of what's going into your head, then clearly that's going to be 100% of what's coming out. And I firmly believe garbage in, garbage out. If you're going to watch a rap video, if you're going to, go out dancing, whatever it is you're going to do. Enjoy your life, right? If you have a cocktail every weekend, super. If you're having a cocktail every day, maybe there's an issue. If you're having 6 cocktails every day, maybe that's an issue, right? So it all depends on how much are you going to the gym versus how much are you going out drinking. How much are you ingesting, Grand Theft Auto versus reading your Bible or going for a jog or doing things that are positive. And at least that's the way I see it. And I think when you have an imbalance there, you're going to have an imbalance in society, just like you're having an imbalance in your life. Those are my thoughts. John, I thank you for your call from LaSalle, Illinois, WLS in the building. Straight ahead, Dr. Chloe Carmichael.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
Big fan. Your impact is really big. Honored to be here.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
I'm a free speech absolutist through and through. I think that the utility of speech is what makes human beings different than any other type of being on the planet. Aristotle said we are the speaking beings, that our capacity to communicate is who we are. And I actually think it creates an active citizenry when bad people are allowed to speak. When really bad people are given a permit, all of a sudden the entire population's like, that's disgusting. Let's go get our yard signs, go make them, and we're going to go speak out against them. They're kind of on their toes. They're looking out for things. All of a sudden, if the government becomes the speech police and they start calling the shots, like, oh, the government will get rid of the bad guys for me. And they kind of become complacent. They become less active. They become less responsible for the country around them. And so I don't draw a line. That's me. I say that you should allow all opinions to be heard. Now, with slander, if you know you have materially false information and you publish it to a big, wide readership, that is not freedom of speech. That is slander.
I want to talk about freedom of speech. Again, that was the late Charlie Kirk sharing some pearls of wisdom there. And freedom of speech is important, I think, for a lot of people. But our guest argues that freedom of speech comes with mental health benefits. Dr. Chloe Carmichael is a clinical psychologist, a best-selling author, and a fellow at the Independent Women's Forum. She's been featured in the media, countless places, and she's got a brand new book called, Can I Say That? Why Free Speech Matters and How to Use It Fearlessly. Dr. Chloe Carmichael, welcome.
Hi, Rich. It's great to be with you.
Likewise. Thank you. And I want to, I guess, when I saw the information about your book, I said, wow, that sounds interesting. I don't think I've ever spoken with a psychologist that was arguing for free speech. Usually the two are not tied together.
No, that's very true, because for whatever reason, about 90% plus of my field happens to be liberal, like registered Democrats, which is fine, except for whatever reason right now, free speech seems to be a politically coded issue. I think it should belong to both sides of the aisle. But right now it feels, politically coded to the right. So therefore, my field is just standing by and, letting people squash free speech in the name of, quote, hate speech and bullying. And so here I am, a lone voice in the desert, trying to let people know free speech, speaking your mind, is good for you.
Well, amen. Join the club. I'm happy you're here. And let's talk about this book, because it seems like free speech is on trial. And I get, I can see past a lot of the political rhetoric. I get it. If we don't like somebody, oftentimes I'm guilty of it. There's times where I try to use a test on myself, and I say, if it were Obama instead of Trump doing this, and the same situation, how would I respond? And I try to do that to keep myself honest. But then I also realize there's a lot of nuance between making those comparisons. But ultimately, I do support free speech, and I'm happy to have the discussions that people want to have, because I, like you, I think it is good for you. I think it's healthy. I think it's good for the soul. I think it's important that we kind of get it out there, and you allow people to hear a differing perspective. And sometimes I guess keeping it respectful is key. The definition of respectful, I think, varies from person to person, but all of that helps to blow off the steam so that we don't, end up hating each other. And sadly, I feel like that chasm of people who are willing to have the conversation and people that hate each other is growing. I don't think it's growing quickly, but I do think it's growing. Your thoughts?
Yes, for sure. So you're absolutely right. You know, language helps us with so many things cognitively. It helps with emotional regulation. It helps with social support. You know, developing authentic relationships has been shown to, you know, increase social bonding, which we know is good for mental health. But what it also does, what dialogue does, is it helps to manage issues with violence. So when you have people, you know, that are violent offenders or anger management cases, you want to teach them how to use their words, right? And so then when we think about the fact that statistically it is the left, and I, you know, have all kinds of stats and stuff in the book, but it is the left that will do what I call the 5 Ds. So they will decrease contact in real life. They'll drop a friend on Facebook. They'll drop a friend in real life. They'll disinvite a speaker, and they'll decline to date across the aisle, all over political differences. And so when people are less willing to talk, it's not surprising then that the new YouGov polling shows that people on the left are also multiple times, like at least twice, sometimes 8 more times, depending on the situation, more times likely to say that it's okay to be politically violent. So as a psychologist, that's what I'm talking about in my book here, is that words are not violence. In fact, they're the opposite. The more we talk, the less violent we typically are, even if we disagree.
Yeah, well, I think you're spot on with that. If we really ascribe to this this idea that words themselves are violence, I think we've lost, right? We've lost the battle. Violence isn't really accepted anywhere, and words have been accepted most places. Now, not everybody enjoys the free speech that we have in America, but we're in America, so we have that free speech, and I think it's so important that we have. If you're going to have a battle, have that one, right? The battle over what speech is and what violence is and what it isn't, because that's important. Amigos, we're on with Dr. Chloe Carmichael, and Dr. Chloe's a licensed clinical Carmichael. Did I say that wrong? I'm sorry.
No, that's
licensed
right.
clinical psychologist, and she is a USA Today best-selling author and the author of this new book called Can I Say That? And I think that this is a book that America needs to hear about right now. So we're going to continue our conversation with Dr. Chloe straight ahead. Of course, I welcome you all, the audience, to give us a call as well if you're interested in speaking with us. The phone number is 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ. And we come back to continue the conversation with Dr. Chloe and her book, Can I Say That? Don't go anywhere. I'm Rich Valdez.
Voted best head of hair in live late night radio 6 years in a row. It's Rich Valdez.
All right, amigos, welcome back. Familia, Rich Valdez, keeping you company live and national, 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ. And I want to continue our conversation with Dr. Chloe. Dr. Chloe Carmichael is a licensed clinical psychologist and author of the book, Can I Say That? And this is, I think, an important topic because all too often, I'll just say this and then I'm going to hand it back over to the good doctor, but we've been conditioned, socialized, raised, taught to not talk about politics and not talk about religion, and as if this is something very bad. And I'm just going to say, I get paid to talk. That's what I do for work. The most important things that you can talk about in life, and the most important things I think in real life, you know, if you're going to get married, you want to know about their politics, you want to know about their religion, and likely their finances too. You know, you don't want to marry somebody that's in massive debt, or at least you want to know about it before you get married. But these are important things that are make and break in a relationship, and honestly, they're make and break in society. And they're not, in my opinion, they shouldn't be ignored. These are things that are deeply important. But we've been conditioned to not talk about things that are important and instead to focus on the latest that's going on with, I don't know, Kimberly Kardashian or LeBron James or whomever, right? Whatever your guilty pleasure is to get your mind off of things. And while there's nothing wrong with that per se, some of us fall into this trap where we think that we shouldn't talk about politics or religion. The flip side of that is some of us think that we need to always talk about politics and religion, and we don't know the limits of where we should just ask, you know, how you doing? How's your family? How's the weather? Right? And I think that's a skill that we all need to continue to hone. But the book is Can I Say That? And I think this is one that we all need, right? We all need to take a look at a book about what we can say and what we can't. Let's bring back our guest, Dr. Chloe Carmichael. Welcome back.
Hi, Rich. It is so good to be with you again.
Thank you. Now, let's talk about this, about the book. I guess, why did you write this book about basically, this interrogative, can I say that? Why choose that as a title?
Well, frankly, because I agree with a lot of what you were saying about, people feeling like they were raised to not talk about politics. Except, interestingly enough, I would say if you happen to be more liberal leaning, more on the left, it was more okay to talk about politics because, for example, in academia in New England, the faculty ratio is 28-1 liberal, or except if you're on social media, right? Because until recently, you could say leftist things on media, or social media, and frankly, most regular media too. And so that created this false sense of social consensus, And so
Right.
I think that while most people, as you said, maybe felt like, oh, well, we won't talk about politics, people on the right were especially muzzled. And so when we have that kind of inability to express ourselves, tensions rise. And then, of course, people on the left, they get almost an inflated sense of their social weight and their social clout and this grandiosity, which I think also contributes to some of the violence that we're seeing. So to answer your question, I actually fled New York to come to the free state of Florida during COVID to protect my 3-year-old from the mask craze. And then I noticed just being here that people were having more breadth in their conversations. And so I started doing that too. And I realized it was good for my mental health. And that was kind of what got me interested.
You're like, I got to let everybody know about this. This is fantastic. Yeah, I get it. Listen, I frequent Florida often, and I love it there. I'm just waiting for the cards to align for me to make the same move you made.
Well, Mom Donnie may do it for you.
Oh, my gosh, I know. You're right. Dr. Chloe Carmichael and her book, Can I Say That? Now, this is, I think, very interesting. You're right. A lot of people facing the threat of Mamdani coming in as mayor. God forbid, but that's a possibility. But this is, I think, a part of the larger issue where, to the point that you made, people may not know what they can say or are afraid to say certain things. What's your advice, or I guess, how do you spell it out in the book? People who are like, you know what, I'm afraid of being canceled. So, rather than get in trouble, I'm just going to stay here and take this abuse.
Yeah, well, so that's a good point. We don't want to feel like we're, quote, taking abuse when sometimes we may not even have given the other person a chance to accept us, right? So I'll throw 3 quick techniques at you since you asked. One is you can do what we call in psychology to narrate your experience. So you could say to a friend or a professor or whatever, hey, I've been holding back some views because I've assumed that, you'd freak out, but I don't want to put that on you when I haven't even told you how I feel. So can I share with you how I feel about some stuff? And I want to hear whatever you think, and we'll go from there. So that's one way. Another way, and this is especially good for, say, college kids, or if you're in a classroom or a situation, is to find an ally. So to say to a friend, you know what, I'm going to speak up about such and such in class. And it would mean a lot if you would kind of just at least chime in and say, I think maybe she has a point. And then the third way, this might sound a little silly, but some people, as you said, are really scared, or they really are dealing with someone who's kind of verbally, to use your word, abusive. You can actually even do role play. You know, you can have a good buddy and say, look, I want to have it out. I want to practice standing up to my in-laws about who I voted for. So, like, let's do a role play so I can work it out in advance a little bit.
Yeah, I think that's probably the best one. You got to practice what you're going to say if you want to say it effectively. Otherwise, especially if it's kind of contentious like that, otherwise you might mess it up, right? And then you're like, damn, I should have said it like this. So
Exactly.
I definitely recommend
and the more
practicing.
relaxed you are, the better it is anyway. When you feel like you have some sense of what you want to say or what didn't sound right, the more relaxed you are, the more relaxed the other person will be.
Yeah, that makes the most sense, because I feel like the first scenario, not that it doesn't make sense, but if I tell somebody, listen, I've been holding back some of my views because I think you might freak out, but do you mind if I share? And they go, yeah, sure. And then I tell them, they go, man, you're a psycho. What are you, one of those Trump cult members? You know, I've had that conversation. So, where do we go from there?
Well, I mean, then in that situation, I guess what I would do, depending on the situation, is you can say, well, okay, so I hear you saying that you think that, it's psycho that somebody would vote for Trump. Can you tell me why? And when they, tell you the racist, sexist, bigot, homophobic line, you repeat it back to them so they know that you heard them. Like, okay, so you think he's X, Y, and Z. Do you want to talk about it? Do you want to have a debate about it? Can we try to share some facts on both sides? Or would that just not interest you? And if they say it would not interest me, then at least you figure that out in advance. But somebody might surprise you and say, well, yeah, actually, let's talk about it. But if they say, I won't talk about it with you, then I think at least you can start recognizing what's a real friendship and what's someone who's outright telling you that they don't really want to even hear or have a discussion about who you are, what you believe.
Yeah, good. Actually, very good points. And I feel like that is kind of the approach I take, not so much with friends, because I don't really have an issue there, but with callers, people who call here who disagree. I try to take that approach. Tell me more. Let me help me understand what's going on here, and go in that route. That's really good. Folks, we're on with Dr. Chloe Carmichael. Dr. Chloe Carmichael, I have a couple more questions for you, but I know you're scheduled till 40 minutes after. Can you stick around for a couple of minutes, or do you have to go?
Oh, yeah, Rich, I'd love to.
All right, so you stick around. Folks, we're going to come right back. We're going to continue talking about how to navigate this social and politically charged dialogue and the rest of her book, Can I Say That? Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. Call now, 833-4VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
All right, amigos, welcome back. I wanted to wrap up with our guest, Dr. Chloe Carmichael. She's the author of the book, Can I Say That? And I think this is something that you should definitely pick up a copy for yourself, and one to give away. Give it to your favorite leftist or somebody on your side of the aisle. Either way, I think this is something that everybody can benefit from learning more about. Dr. Carmichael, I had a final question for you, which is, what's the main takeaway that readers are going to get from reading your book?
Well, I would say the main takeaway is that free speech is good for mental health. So, there's a million ways to do it. The book has some techniques on how to speak up courageously and also how to listen respectfully when we're feeling hot. And then it has the cognitive and emotional benefits of free speech. Like you said, I think it's good for college kids or, people of all generations. I see it as a public service announcement.
I love that. Now, Dr. Chloe, people who want to learn more about your book or other work that you're involved in, how do they keep up to speed with you?
Yeah, so go to freespeechtoday.com. That's freespeechtoday.com. And there, you can pre-order the book, which would mean the world to me. It's coming out in a few weeks. And when you get pre-orders on books, then retailers will stock them better. So if you go to freespeechtoday.com, it would really help me out. And then through there, you can also follow me on Twitter. Sometimes I get a little active on Twitter when, there's big stuff happening in the news. I like to sound off a little bit there. So if people go to freespeechtoday.com, they can take it from there.
Outstanding. Dr. Chloe Carmichael, thanks for joining us. You're a gentlewoman, a scholar, and a patriot. I thank you.
Thanks, Rich.
Godspeed. And amigos, your thoughts, your calls, your reactions, all coming up right now. Let's see. Where do I want to go? I want to go to Chris. Chris is in Gainesville, Virginia on WMAL. Go right ahead.
Oh, yes. How are you, Rich?
Wonderful. Thank you.
Yes, I'm calling in to comment on the president's plans to build a ballroom next to the White House. And I can say this as someone who voted for him 3 times.
Yeah.
What he's building is going to dwarf the White House. It's the biggest thing that's ever been built there. The White House is the main event on that campus. It's not the old executive office building. It's not the East Wing or the West Wing. And it's not this ballroom. If he wants his ballroom, he can put it underground. Where it wouldn't, you can just slip it right there, and then you can take an escalator down, and no one will see it. And it'll be beautiful. But to put it above ground next to the White House, and there's no pushback on this from anybody. You would think the White House Historical Society would say something. I know if you want to build anything in Washington, you've got to go past the National Capital Planning Commission. And apparently presidents can do anything they want. So this is one area where I completely disagree with them.
All right. Well, thank you for sounding off on that, Chris. I don't really care, honestly. I could say this. Here's what I'll say. And I don't mean that in a flippant way to you. I mean, I don't care if Trump wants to build a ballroom or not. But I will say the reason I don't care is because I've been to 2 ballrooms that Trump's built. And, man, they were nice. The Mar-a-Lago ballroom is fantastic. And it has like an identical twin sister at the Waldorf. Now the Waldorf used to be Trump International Hotel in D.C., just down the block from the White House. And that, I think, is another fantastic ballroom. It gives you a real kind of old world classic feel, very high end. And Trump's a builder, and I think a darn good one. And if it's kind of like one of the perks, right? It's like, hey, we got a president, happens to be a builder. I'd rather have Trump build this thing and oversee that, when I saw him on the roof of the White House not that long ago, than any other president. And for a couple of reasons. One, he's a builder. He's aggressive with it. He's, on time and under budget. And B, he's been the target of 2 assassinations attempts. And I think because of the way he thinks and because of what he's been through, he's going to build into it probably the most secure ballroom. And you think about a ballroom that's in a White House, all I could think of is state functions that are not in the Roosevelt room or here or there or the dining room, but more so in this ballroom. And when you have something in this new ballroom, you want it to be the safest place in America. So especially if you have other heads of state and whatnot. So I think it's a good thing. I'm sure it comes with some cost, but I think there was a whole conversation about the cost that happened earlier, where there was donors and whatnot. So I got to say, all in all, I think it's a win for America, a big win. It's kind of like we get Trump for free, right? We get a Trump built ballroom for free, and I can't think of somebody better to build a ballroom. Chris in Gainesville, Virginia on WML. Thank you for your call. Amigos, we come right back. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, amigos, to the phones we go. Let's go to Jerome, Charleston, South Carolina, WTMA. Jerome, go right ahead.
Hey, who's the moron that thinks building a ballroom was a good idea? Oh, yeah. Probably
that's
the
me.
same moron that thinks that probably the same moron that's trying to prosecute a guy that he hired and was blowing kisses at when he hired him. That would be the one and only James Comey. Hey, that woman lawyer he appointed to prosecute him, she's going to get destroyed. They're going to embarrass her. She better hope they don't put that trial on TV, because I'll be watching it and laughing at the same time.
So you think that Comey's going to come out winning at the end of this?
He's been practicing law for 38 years, okay? 38 years. He's got the best lawyers. He's got lots of lawyer friends that want a piece of that action, and I can't wait to see how it's going to come out, because I think he's going to walk. Hey,
you know what? Listen, Jerome, I may not be too far from you on this. I hope that if he's found guilty, they throw the book at him and he pays the price for what he's done. But it would not surprise me, and if you listen to my conversation with Christina Bobb last night, she agreed that this is something that could go in either direction. It's not a slam dunk in either direction. So for once, you and I might be in agreement here that this may result in nothing at the end of the day. I hope that it does. I really hope. I think this country needs some accountability. I think what James Comey did was wrong. If they can prove that what he did was wrong, it's a slam dunk, I hope. But again, I don't know. I'm not sold yet. We'll see. Hopefully they'll prove me wrong. I'm a skeptic when it comes to holding the deep state accountable. I feel like we never do enough of that. Jerome in South Carolina, WTMA. Thank you, my brother. I always appreciate you listening and calling in to disagree with me. And we continue. Tony, Montreal, Canada. My man Antonio, he's in Canada. He listens on WVMT. He's always pirating their signal to get a little bit of Radio Free America. Tony, what's up, man?
Radio Free America, pirating here, coming in. Listen, I talked about permission, the leftist permission structure for violence. So I looked up the violence that was perpetrated in America in the last, in history. So these are the democratic issues that caused violence in the United States. They killed Lincoln, they killed JFK, MLK, Charlie Kirk. They created the KKK. They lynched blacks, segregation. They created Jim Crow. They have internment camps during the 40s. And
you're going too fast, Tony. Hold on. You're saying that based on race, the Democrats were putting people in concentration camps here in America. Is that what you're saying?
I said that based on political jargon during the 40s, they interned the Japanese and they interned.
And they were all Japanese, though.
Mostly Japanese, but in Canada they interned Japanese and Italian Canadians. But what I'm saying is the liberals, whether in the United States or in Canada, they always say that they're non-violent or they don't believe in violence. But guess what? They always call the Republicans racist. Who really are the racists?
Right, and who really are the violent ones here? Right. It was, as I remember it, it was Jefferson Davis and the Democrats in the South that started that Civil War. Tony, thanks for the call, brother. Amigos, hasta la próxima. Take care, good night, and God bless you, America. I'm Rich Valdez.